Great job. Stone, Isola, McMullen. Let's go. The perfect run and perfect year for the Boston Red Sox. Hats off to them. Literally, Mookie Betts is wearing two hats. Hats off to them. The claim that this is the best Red Sox team ever. We'll have a debate on that. Also, halfway point of the NFL season, including the only thing that was less covered than the Rams line, once Gurley stopped short, the Rams field. We see you, USC logo.
You got to go there. Come on, Cohen. You really have to go there?
Oh, it just wasn't covered. Like the football
it's
game wasn't
Around the
covered.
Horn,
The field wasn't
the
covered.
show of competitive banter. Here's Tony Reale.
108-win regular season, 11-3 postseason. Once you do both of those, you're in rarefied air to begin with. How these Red Sox scored their runs with 2 outs, with 2 strikes, by every single place in the lineup, including this is my 8th team, Steve Pearce, and where they got all the outs from, everywhere, including the now postseason beast, David Price, and who was pulling the strings? Rookie manager Alex Cora, like he was winning Mega Millions. The only loss they had this World Series was in that Game 3 last year that you stayed at for 7 hours that went 18 innings. You heard John Henry after the game call them the greatest Red Sox team in history. That's very interesting when you think about 2004. I want you on that, Jackie. But first and foremost, how did this Red Sox team do it, and how good historically are they?
Well, it remains incredible to me that they won the World Series relatively easily with their best pitcher, Chris Sale, who we will find out maybe today, maybe tomorrow, 2 weeks from now, had some serious kind of ailment.
Yeah.
Then you consider the fact that they won the World Series with their best hitter, who's going to be the AL MVP, Mookie Betts, not having a single really meaningful hit until last night. You got Joe Kelly, who couldn't locate the mound, now throwing fireballs up the middle. He makes your bullpen unbeatable. You have Steve Pearce, who a player once told me if you ever traded for cash considerations, you were in big trouble. Steve Pearce, trading for cash considerations and a minor leaguer, now you're MVP. Eduardo Nunez, Cora's pitching hitting for him, and I'm going, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he hits it out of the park. It was just an incredible team effort, and that's
I hear that this is a team above all teams, and they were all season long. Now, to hear John Henry say they're the best team this franchise has ever had, well, 2004 sitting there, and it was the greatest moment in franchise history. What do you think of that, Jackie?
So, do you take Dave Roberts' 2004 Red Sox team that comes back from 3-0 and they throw Schilling and Pedro out there, or do you take Alex Cora's 2007 Red Sox, and they roll Beckett out there with Manny and Ortiz smashing home runs? Having said all of that, you look at the way this team was constructed and what they've accomplished, I think you have to tip your hat to this team.
You tip both hats if you're Mookie Betts. He was wearing 2 hats. Frank Isola, weigh in.
Yeah, never let it be said that the regular season doesn't mean anything. They were the best team in baseball, 108 wins. And think about who they beat in the playoffs. They beat a very good Yankee team, a very good Astro team. Both of those teams won 100-plus games, and they did it on the road. And then they beat the best team in the National League, again, did on the road. If I'm the owner, if I'm John Henry, I'm thinking, man, I missed out on 5 extra home games because we were so dominant. And the 04 team, what was terrific about them was, yes, they, exercised the demons, as they say, and they knocked off the Yankees. But they also fell behind 03. This team was so good, they never fell behind 03. So give them credit for that as well.
Kevin Blackistone?
I remember earlier this season we were talking baseball on this show, and Jackie Mack happened to mention that no one was paying attention to the Red Sox because nobody knew who they were, and they were in first place then. And for them to go wire to wire in this baseball season as the best team out there and to beat 100-win teams, as Frank just mentioned, makes them unquestionably the best Red Sox team ever. Just because we didn't know who these guys were at the beginning of the season, we certainly know who they are now. And you also can add to the fact that J.D. Martinez didn't even hit in this game and that they had a shorter bench because it didn't even go to their lefty and Pomeranz. So this was a great team that they put out there.
And now, finally, we make our way to Los Angeles. Bill, I know you view this from the Dodgers perspective, but first we have to start from the Boston perspective, please.
Well, they're the best team out there. The World Series, let's face it wasn't close. The Red Sox are a far better team than the Dodgers. They're far better than any team in the National League this year. They got to be the best Red Sox team ever. Not only the best regular season and postseason record, they had the best record in spring training in all of baseball. And they're one of only 3 teams to clinch all 3 rounds on the road in the postseason. There's such old-fashioned beauty. There's such relentless hitting. Nobody's trying to get home runs. They kind of run into them. They're moving runners along. Great defense. And the chemistry on the team, from Chris Sale screaming in the dugout to Nathan Eovaldi, probably the players were crying and giving him a standing ovation. He was a losing pitcher in Game 3, but he went 6 innings, 97 pitches, and they appreciated what he did for them. Such a great combination.
That might be
I can't imagine a better Red Sox.
The biggest thing you could say about this team, the greatest accolade, is that they made Game 3, the 7.5-hour, 18-inning game, into a footnote in the series. I mean, that after that game, the inflection point could have gone in any direction. It could have gone any
off the
direction.
Hook. Ian Kinsler, totally off the hook.
Off the hook as well. Bill, did you vote for MVP, or does the LA Times vote for
the LA Times staff had
Who'd
MVP
you vote for?
vote, and we voted for Steve Pearce. Steve Pearce, he broke open Game 4. He broke open Game 5. He was the offensive reason they won those games. These were pitching duels. Remember, they were down 4-0 in Game 4. So Steve Pearce clearly was the MVP. He was the guy that changed the series. The pitching was great. David Price was great, but they wouldn't have won over
Well,
that
that's what I was going to ask. Jackie, from your couch, you would have voted for Pearce, you would have voted for Price, or maybe somebody else?
I certainly understand voting for Steve Pearce for all the reasons Bill just said, but I'm watching that and I'm thinking about the albatross that's so heavy around that slender Dave, his neck, okay? 0-9 in the postseason, and then he wins Game 2 for you. He comes in relief in Game 3, Tony. He warms up for you in Game 4 and then wins the clinching game and ends up with the World Series ERA of 1.98. Now, if I told any of you before the World Series that was going to start, you would have all said that he should have been the MVP.
Yeah, okay, all right. So you would have voted for Price, it sounds like. Bill, you said Red Sox won this series each and every way, but there were some razor-thin margins, and it came down to some very tight decisions made by Alex Cora and tight decisions made by Dave Roberts. Do you think this was a case of Cora managing Roberts?
Oh, there's no question. And I love Dave Roberts. He's a great guy, but he got outmanaged because Cora seemed to know and feel his players better, understood them better. Dave Roberts was outmanaged simply he made several terrible pitching decisions, but the one that stands out is, of course, in Game 4, the team's up 4-0, and he pulls out Rich Hill, throwing a one-hitter in the 7th inning of the team leading 4-0. Afterward, Roberts said he thought Hill wanted out. Hill said, I didn't want out. There's a miscommunication in that situation. You can't have that in the World Series. The manager's got to know his player and vice versa. So, yeah, he got outmanaged.
Frank, you want to address that?
No chance the player wants out of a one-hitter, and he has the lead in the World Series. And Bill mentioned feel, even the analytics, it's a one-hitter. To me, when Puig hit that home run, that could have been the difference in this series. That really could have gotten the momentum going the other way. Why are you going to a bullpen? He's playing, reliever roulette with these guys. None of them were that good all throughout the playoffs. You finally have hit on something here in Game 4. You have a chance to even up the series with Clayton Kershaw pitching, and you take a guy out after he struck somebody out on a one-hitter. Come on.
Wow, reliever roulette. I like that. A man's sport with the bullet called life. Let's give an autopsy on your Dodgers, Bill, since we have you here. Second year in a row, the World Series was clinched at Dodger Stadium, and both years it wasn't by the Dodgers. You talked about Roberts' microscope that he was under, and the Kershaw opt-out is looming. How do you view Kershaw and what now for Puig and Machado and these Dodgers?
Well, first off, I got to say, and people aren't going to like hearing this, but the analytics that the Dodgers use work so well during the regular season. They don't work well when they play an elite team in a postseason series. They just don't. The analytics, the players.
What do you mean by that? What are you saying?
All right, for example, the Dodgers only had 2 players, Machado and Turner, who started every game. They benched their top 4 home run hitters in this series because of the analytics and the matchups. The hitters lost the rhythm. They lost the feel for the game. You can't do that. Also, the Dodgers believe anybody can relieve. They had a chance during the season to get a top relief pitcher to help out Kenley Jansen. They got a bunch of journeymen thinking anybody can get a couple outs. That didn't work.
Okay, so that's your view on that. I want everybody to address that. But also, real quick, on Kershaw, on the idea that he's got 3 days to decide here?
Oh, well, he's going to stay a Dodger because the Dodgers need him for their history and legacy. He's still one of the greatest pitchers ever in regular season. They got to put up with this postseason.
Anybody want to weigh in on what Bill was saying about what the Dodgers' major malfunction is? Frank, you?
Well, I think Clayton Kershaw, they tied the game up in Game 1, and then he didn't even get an out in the 5th inning. And then here, you need him to win that game. He's the ace of the staff. And before the Dodgers are hitting, they're already down 2-0. He's a terrific pitcher, no question about it. He was great in the National League Championship Series. He did not deliver on the biggest stage. That's the bottom line.
Some of the tough questions you have to ask yourself after you lose the World Series for the 2nd year in a row in your home park. Meanwhile, easier questions to ask for your Red Sox, Jackie, because the guys who are up on contract, Eovaldi, a great story and a great name, and Pearce as well, but it's not. I mean, Betts is under contract. Martinez is under contract. 4 in 15 years. In that span, they've won more than the Patriots have since they won their first World Series in 2004. It's incredible.
And it really is. It's unbelievable because, of course, of the turnover and the way they win. They've won in so many different ways through those 4 championships. It's kind of interesting to me. That's the most fascinating.
Well, there are people who can vote and will vote in Massachusetts who know nothing but winning in Massachusetts. We'll move on. One NFL story up here to talk about. The news of the day, Browns firing Hugh Jackson and offensive coordinator Todd Haley. There were reports of dysfunction. Stop me when that sounds familiar with the Browns. But this also could be just about the L's, and it could be about Baker Mayfield's development or lack thereof. Frank, makes sense to you now?
Oh, absolutely it doesn't. I think if you go back to the first episode of Hard Knocks, it did not look like Todd Haley, Hugh Jackson, and Greg Williams were all on the same page. It looked like there was going to be infighting. All of us here have covered teams before, and we know the dynamic of when coaches are brought in. Maybe that coach didn't really want that guy. It's always going to be a mess from the start. You cannot defend Hugh Jackson's record. He's 336-1. I mean, give me a break. But clearly, that mesh of coaches, and we saw it live on Hard Knocks, it didn't look like it was going to work out.
So you'd clean house. How about you, Blackstone?
Yeah, you might as well clean house. And let's not forget, this Browns team probably is better than its actual record. I mean, they lost 2 games this year by 3 points each. Those come down to coaching decisions and things you do managing the football late in games, overtime games, all that kind of stuff. So I certainly see this, and you know, when you're hitching your wagon to Mayfield there, maybe this offense is not best for him, and you do have some offensive weapons on that team around him, so they need to do better.
Bill Plaschke?
Yeah, they got to take care of Baker Mayfield. This is amazing we're even discussing this as an issue because it's obvious this should happen. I believe he was 0-20 on the road in the NFL, and that's the worst head coach. That's worse of any head coach in history. In that, and of course he won 3 games. It's time to clean house definitely because you got to take care of your quarterback, see what he needs, nurture him.
And Jackie Mack.
Well, the thing that's funny to me, it is all about Baker Mayfield, of course, but you see this power struggle, and guess what? You both lose. You don't see that very often. Well, they'll keep Todd Haley. They'll keep Hugh Jackson. No, you're both out. Greg Williams is an interesting choice, but he's in the building. We'll see what happens going forward.
We'll see what happens in buy or sell, but right now, L.A. is beating Boston. I wonder if L.A. takes any solace in that. Taking a break right here.
Bill, hope that makes you feel better.
Did you hear the Red Sox fans saying the Yankee chant at Dodger Stadium yesterday? Did you see the Giants TV go after the Dodgers in their tweet? Factor of when the game was never really in cover range. This was tight.
Smart play.
Also only possible because of the Ty Montgomery fumble that took the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands and gave L.A. the win. There is reporting that Montgomery went rogue when he decided to return it. Bill, when you hear that, what does it tell you about the outcome of this game?
It tells me that the Packers have some issues there on the sidelines, but it still tells me that the Ramik Wilson had the tremendous hit. Don't discount that. The Rams, Ramik Wilson, had the hit on Montgomery. I don't want that to be underrated in this.
So you wouldn't say the Rams got lucky in this game either, it sounds like.
No, I think they earned this game. They earned it.
KB, how about you?
Well, they did come from behind to force the Packers in that situation, but when you are given orders by your team as to what to do in case you catch the ball in the end zone, that's what you do because you have Aaron Rodgers there to back you up, a guy with all those come-from-behind wins. Don't take the ball out of his hands.
Frank Isola?
Thank you, Kevin. Bill's talking about the hit that never should have happened. You catch the ball in the end zone, you take a knee, you have Aaron Rodgers, you march down the field, you kick the game-winning field goal. Game over, Bill. That's how it works.
Jackie Mack.
Okay, that all may be true, but the reason I like this win for the Rams is because Todd Gurley didn't play particularly well. The team really wasn't as prolific as they has been for the rest of the season. And what happens? They end up still winning the game anyway. You make your own luck. That's always
okay.
True. I agree.
I hear that. I hear that. The Todd Gurley didn't play particularly well. How many yards rushing did he have? Over 100? How many times did he get in the end zone? How many times a 2-point conversion? It's just amazing how high the bar is for Todd Gurley. That's all I'm saying, Jackie.
He's the MVP.
That's fair.
He's the league MVP right now.
You have him over Mahomes?
That's fair, but do you agree this was his best game, Bill? Do you agree?
Get out of your bubble, Bill. Bill's in his LA bubble.
We'll have a wave of mutilation and we'll move on. Buy or sell 2. Saints 30, Vikings 20. New Orleans won a game where Drew Brees threw for 120 yards. They had never done that before. KB, they show you something by winning a game with Drew Brees throwing for just over 120?
That was more of a miracle than the game that they lost to the Vikings with Stephon Diggs. Unbelievable. But you know what? They got a couple of turnovers. That's what you need, a pick six and that long fumble return, and those can make the difference in games like that.
Ice, what did you see from, well, the game being won with Breeze not throwing for anything, and also the game being won coming back from the loss they had last year?
Well, the one thing that's special about the Saints team, and this is why they could win on the road outdoors, they have a running game. But this is about New Orleans defense, which blew that game last year in the playoffs. They made a bunch of huge plays, including a pick six. That's why they won this game.
Pick six by Williams. How about you, McMullen?
You know, it's amazing how high the bar we set for Drew Brees, isn't it? He only throws for 120 yards. And
Wait a second, Jackie. Whoa. Are you going to compare
Come on, man,
Drew Brees?
I couldn't resist.
Okay, good.
I couldn't resist. You know, he still has a 77% completion rate. So I thought that the Vikings were going to win this game. They were 14-3 at home before this against the Saints. This is a very big win for them because, as Frank said, of their defense.
Bill Plaschke.
Couldn't resist.
All the
Sorry.
teams left on the Rams schedule. I know they're playing the Chiefs. They got the Saints on Sunday, and I think the Rams are probably more worried about them than anything because they're a complete team. Frank's right. They can run the ball. They create turnovers now. They don't need Drew Brees as much as they did before. That's a very scary Saints team.
We'll move on. Bengals 37, Buccaneers 34. Cincy, almost cincying this game, but they uncincyed in the end. This is about Tampa and what they're doing now at quarterback. Jameis Winston, the 4 picks. Fitzpatrick back from the dead, which had the debate from about 4 weeks ago back from the dead. What's different now is more L's for Winston and the Bucs maybe being closer to having to make a decision. And there is tomorrow's trade deadline, so maybe some of you think that could be where this goes. Frank, Fitzpatrick will start Sunday against the Panthers. Do you see Tampa moving on from Winston?
I think they're doing it right now by starting him. I would have gone back to Jameis Winston one more time if he struggled. I have no problem bringing in a relief pitcher as a quarterback, and they've done that with Fitzpatrick. They've moved on from Jameis Winston by not starting him this weekend.
Jackie McMullen?
The problem with that, though, Frank, is you're in the middle of the NFL season, and we know that there are hardly ever any big NFL trades, particularly when it comes to quarterbacks. But they should have moved on from this dude. He's 10 straight road games, hasn't come up with a win. He throws too many interceptions, takes too many chances, and he's been in the league a little too long to keep doing those kind of things.
Yeah, Frank, how many picks do you need to see to actually bench him? I mean, my goodness.
Right.
He's thrown as many as 4 in a game, more than as much as anybody in the last 3 or 4 years. No, this is the right move. They're moving on from him. I don't know what they do now, though. I have no idea what they do now, but it's not going to be him.
Blackstone.
Well, that's the problem, Bill. I mean, it's a halfway decent team, and they just moved on from Fitzpatrick because he threw a bunch of picks in one particular game. So, to me, I think you got to just ride with both of these guys for this season because you don't have a better alternative.
Well, that's the point, right? Winston is Fitzpatricking at the moment right now. Fitzpatrick, of course, is capable of doing that as well. And the debate always may have been...
use him.
Well, the debate always may have been who's the 16th best quarterback in the NFL versus the 20th best quarterback in the NFL. That was
exactly it.
Ooh, Jackie Mack, that bar is set awfully high for you. This is hugely enough to
It's okay, man. I jumped right over it. Just call me the Fosbury Flop, baby.
No, you're entitled down, Jackie. We love you. Plastic Stone, go down next. Plaschke and Blackstone, good luck in showdown. Another Cleveland firing. Cavs sacking Tyronn Lue at 0-6. Either a complete disrespect or they did him a favor, depending on your point of view. Bill, how do you think the Cavs and Dan Gilbert look firing Lue 2 weeks into the season?
They did him a big favor. Ty Lue, there's only 5 coaches right now active who have championship rings. Ty Lue has a championship ring. He will get a job at a better place in a more stable franchise with a better chance. Good for the
Yeah, but it just looks so silly. I mean, we know what the Cleveland Cavaliers lost in the offseason. They lost their entire team in one guy. And now to actually even think about firing the coach as some sort of balm to what's gone wrong is just kind of crazy looking.
Right. So what is this really about in your estimation? Is it about not playing the new guys? Is it about not just wanting to get as far away from what they were last year?
They want to get away from LeBron. That's clear.
We'll move on. Favorite Warriors item from the weekend? You had the wins. You had Cousins ejected from the bench. You had the Warriors dancing to the Fergie remix. Curry getting so crazy hot. KB?
Oh, it's got to be Boogie Cousins getting involved and not even being in uniform. You got to like that. What did he have? Get a minus for his involvement in that game, despite the fact he didn't even have on tennis shoes?
-1?
No, it's got to be the dancing in the locker room. That was so cool to see a team so together And so, you can tell how much great chemistry they had. That's why they're champions. Watch them dance together. That's why they're champions.
Yeah, it's almost like they're good together. I think it's what you're seeing there. Bill Plaschke, you got a loss last night from the baseball team you were covering, but the coverage you did for the last month is getting you this FaceTime. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Well, on Game 3 on Friday night, after it ended, 7 hours and 20 minutes later, I got up out of my chair and I was lightheaded. And all I could think of was Ted Barrett did the whole thing standing up. The home plate umpire, MVP of the World Series, Ted Barrett, over 534 pitches, 30 dozen baseballs, was behind the plate, called a tremendous game, went to the bathroom once, took one bathroom break. I went to the bathroom 10 times during that game. And he did a great job. And according to Tyler Kepner of the New York Times, in a great story, Barrett said he got through it with prayer. Well, thank heaven that Ted Barrett was behind the plate in that game. All kudos to him.
Bill, I know you've gotten points and you've gotten mutes for how you cover the Dodgers. I want to say this. The column you wrote about finding the beat LA guy in advance of the series,